We've seen it often on YouTube videos where foreign guys are building houses in the Philippines. And certainly, you've also seen it on my YouTube channel. But what I want to look at in this video is the mindset of the foreigner before he even decides to build a house in the Philippines. Because if he doesn't have the right mindset, he can spend much money and be the one to lose out financially in the end. So if you're considering building any type of house in the Philippines, then be sure to stay with me here. Over time, I've heard many YouTubers who have built a house or two in the Philippines refer to the house as my house or our house. And whilst I do get that it's something they've built with their Filipina, the harsh reality is that it's not the foreigner's house. Well, legally speaking, that is. It really doesn't matter if he has put all the money into it or if he was the one to design the house or to supervise the build every day. One must know that whilst a foreigner can actually own the structure, he can't own the land. Now yes, he may be able to lease the land, but you can be sure in the Philippines he can never own it. And if he doesn't own the land and a house is fixed to the land, then who actually owns the house? This is certainly something to really consider if you're thinking about building a house of any type in the Philippines. Some guys will try and tell you of clever loopholes around this, but mostly it's nonsense. And you want to be sticking with what the government laws are on land ownership in the Philippines for foreigners. So be sure to seek out a competent and experienced attorney in the Philippines. I see some guys building very nice, lavish, Western-style houses which must be costing them well over $100,000. And I think to myself that clearly it's a nice house. But what happens to that house should something go wrong with the relationship at any time in the future? We can all hope for the best, but clearly none of us have a crystal ball to know for sure what will happen. For example, for those of us who were in a previous long-term relationship, I bet you never went into that relationship thinking it would all end the way it finally did. The same applies when in a relationship with a Filipina. And even though it's true that you can build a house much cheaper in the Philippines than you can in many other Western countries, you still have very much to lose. Of course, we wish all the best for these guys, but can they afford to lose so much in the end should things go wrong? And have they even thought of a backup plan of what they would do should that happen? All of a sudden, they'd be in the Philippines with no girlfriend or wife and nowhere to live. Have they sunk most of their money into that house and now may struggle to get back to their own country? Or will they stay and rent in the Philippines? Or perhaps some guys are fortunate enough to have plenty of money. But for most of us, I assume that's not the case. And so one really needs to consider this step very closely before deciding to go ahead and purchase land to build a house on. And then also to give careful consideration as to how much you're willing to spend on the build. Knowing that in the Philippines, most likely the budget you set won't be enough, as things always seem to crop up that add to the expense. The way I view this is that the house you're building, no matter if it's a luxurious Western-style house or if it's a more simple and basic Filipino-style house, is that this is a gift to your Filipino girlfriend or wife. Simply by virtue that the land is in her name, and therefore, unless the house is easily removed from the property, the house is also hers. Now, there are a few exceptions to this, but you would need to check that with a competent Filipino attorney, as I certainly aren't up to date on all those sorts of laws. I do see many foreign guys complaining on YouTube videos or on the Rafi Tulfo show how they lost land and a house to the Filipina after a few short years. Simply, my view is that these guys have no grounds for complaint, as they entered into a relationship with the Filipina, and in the end, that relationship finished, and because he had the wrong mindset around building a house in the Philippines and what that actually meant for him, in the end, he was shocked. To avoid such issues, some guys may purchase a pre-made home or a container house for this very reason. If the relationship falls over, the guys can at least remove or sell the house to recover some money. But for many like myself who actually built a house on land that's in your Filipina's name, then in most cases the land and the house is hers, no matter if you guys remain together for life or break up in the future. My father always taught me when I was young, and I always hear his words in my mind, and that was to never gamble more than you can afford to lose. And I do believe that this is the case when deciding to build a house in the Philippines. Be comfortable spending an amount that if things do go wrong, then it wouldn't leave you financially devastated. And speak to a competent and experienced Filipino attorney if you're looking for ways that may protect you more financially. No one really likes to think of these things, but we must always consider the best and worst case scenarios if we wish to protect ourselves, and spending many thousands of dollars on a house is something worth thinking hard about. For me, my relationship with my wife remains very strong after 7 years, but still, in my mind when building the house, I needed to understand this is effectively a gift to her. Not to say that I put all the money in myself, because she also worked very hard and contributed greatly. But simply, in my mind, I understand 100% if anything ever happened between the two of us down the track, then this is her house and I'm at peace with that and fully accept it. And I know that I'd be able to walk away and not be financially devastated, which made the decision to build the house much easier. Everyone must decide for themselves how much they're willing to invest into building a house and what type of house you want to build. And remember that building laws and land ownership laws in the Philippines are far different to laws in your country. So be sure to do much research before making any decisions. And as I've said a few times, to protect yourself financially, be sure to speak to an experienced and competent Filipino attorney before committing to anything. People will make their decision on how much money they have. So for some, losing $150,000 may not be a big issue. And for others, as I say, it could be financially devastating. So think carefully before agreeing with your Filipina on building a house, because many Filipinas have had a dream of owning a nice house all their lives, and that becomes their main focus. So don't be swayed by her dreams, and be sure to factor your own security into the equation. And always go into this with a mindset that this land and house are a gift to your Filipina, and stay within a very comfortable budget. Doing this, and as I say, chatting with an experienced and competent Filipino attorney will help you sleep much better at night, and if things go wrong, you won't be financially devastated. If you would like more information around my wife's basic Filipino style house being built in the Philippines, then be sure to check out the playlist on screen now. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.